Project between Two Iberias continues its popular science trip over the northern Spain. After the beautiful and rich from all the standpoints Basque country, we cross the border with Cantabria, another part of the ancient Iberia which has preserved in its identity till nowadays, and which has a right to be considered one of the most ancient and autochthonous components of the modern Spain. And the first to meet us on the land of ancient Cantabrians is Castro Urdiales. The town has a surprisingly rich history. It used to be inhabited by Cantabrians, Basques, Celts, Romans, Westgoths, Vikings, and each nation left its traces on town's face. The architectural center of Castro Urdiales consists of two wonderful buildings: the Santa Ana Castle, which has been functioning as a lighthouse since the 12th century, and the Santa Maria de la Asunción church next to the castle. Built in Gothic style from 13th to 15th centuries, finally in the century number 20 it was proclaimed a national monument. But besides just visual pleasure, Castro Urdiales guards a historical mystery, which is being revealed right now for the first time in the program Between Two Iberias. They think that the name Urdiales relates to the ancient Iberian tribe of Varduli, which we see on the map of Ptolemy. The word Varduli is an impeccable Georgian adjective in the meaning of pink, which comes from Vardi, rose. In order to understand why this local tribe would have obtained such a name, we need to pay attention to one of the most mysterious nations of Spain, Agotes. In France they are called Acagot. Nobody can say anything clear about their origin. Some say they are Freemasons and descend from the builders of King Solomon's temple. Whatever roots they might have, the Agotes are known as white-skinned and red-cheeked. That's why the skin color of theirs should have been the reason for the Agotes to be called pink. So the Agotes are the ancient Varduli, and we have established that through the Georgian language.
And then I show you for the
After Castro Urdiales, there comes beautiful Laredo. The Spanish duo Barquera indeed sings about Laredo, but not about the Cantabrian one, but American, named after its Spanish namesake.
They never sent you to Laredo because he knew that I was there. And then with such a face in such a lonesome place can only be a desperate.
The town's name should be interpreted as a Cartelian toponym Lareti, which means land of treasure. The treasure is to be looked for in the numerous local caves. One of them, the famous Cuelvera cave, is located somewhat inland from the seacoast, along the Asón river in the town of Ramales de la Victoria. The cave is known from the ancient times when it served as a shelter for the Cantabrians who hid there from the Roman invasion. La Cueva de Cuelvera is a part of a big cave complex that stretches for 12 kilometers underground. From here, it's not far to probably the most interesting place in East Cantabria, the national park Collados de Asón, which is Asón Valley passes in the Cantabrian Cordilleras. But first you'll have to pass by a funny village with the Basque name of Arredondo. In the Middle Ages, this smoky hole of a place used to be known as Capital del Mundo, world's capital. For many people from here, known as Indianos, went to conquer Americas and returned home rich. It's interesting to know that Arredondo's flag has similar colors as Ukrainian one, but in reverse order. The valley of the Asón River is surrounded by picturesque limestone mountains that resemble palaces. A small village of Asón is the only settlement within the park's borders. After the marvels of Collados de Asón, we get back on the coast to the small town of Santoña. It seems to have nothing special except for the Faro de Caballo lighthouse, which takes an hour of climbing to get to it. But this is one of the world's gastronomic capitals. They make the best anchovies in the world here, which we'll tell about when presenting the food basket of Cantabria. The further logical itinerary would have province's capital Santander as the next stop, but don't hurry, for you'll miss two emblematic Cantabrian towns. The first of them, Llérganes, jointly with Santillana del Mar, is a symbol of Cantabria and one of the most recognizable sites of the province with its irrepeatable style. Unlike the Basque Country, where the most attractive towns are situated on the coast, Cantabria has a bunch of purely continental gems. The town is a true museum under the sky, with its key monument being the so-called Roman Bridge, which looks pretty much as Roman but was built in the 17th century. Under the bridge you'll see the sad man of the sea, whose tragic story is told to tourists at the local mill museum. Just a little further direction Santander, we make another stop at Bárcena. First, there is a big zoo here, where animals aren't kept neither in cages nor in any other enclosures, and the visitors watch them from the cable cars. There are even elephants here. Animals are good, but it's time for a dinner. Bárcena is a wonderful place to taste the famous Cantabrian cocido montañés at. It means mountain stew. As it often happens, once a food of poor shepherds, today it turned into a gastronomic symbol that enjoys quite a popularity at the local restaurants, such as Mesón Peña Cabarga. Cocido montañés is a rich soup made of white beans and colored greens of the local asa de cántaro species, with the addition of compango, which is smoked meat assortment consisting of the famous Spanish chorizo, pork ribs, known as costillas here, as famous morcilla, blood pudding, and tocino, which is Spanish bacon. Unlike the other typical Spanish cocidos, the cocido montañés does not include chickpea, while all the ingredients must be eaten together, not separately. The Cantabrians can't boast of many impressive wines of their own, so it would be natural to order a neighboring Rioja wine that bears the name of Tierra Cantábrica. And finally, the magic Santander, a city that successfully struggles for the right to be among the best 10 cities of the country, as most of the other Spanish cities though do. For example, the Spanish bank number 1, Banco Santander, is headquartered here. Besides, here we have an opportunity to get acquainted closer with the concept of Plaza Mayor, Central Square. It always is situated inside a city block, being closed thus from the neighboring streets. Santander's configuration is such that the city has 2 embankments. One of them goes along the Santander Bay, while the second one, together with the beautiful beaches, faces directly the Atlantic Ocean. This part of the city also hosts the Royal La Magdalena Palace, as well as a park of the same name on the peninsula of the same name too. And now it's a good moment to draw your attention to the traditional Spanish stubbornness as to anything that relates to the Basque topic. The name of Santander is derived by the etymologist from the name of Saint Emeterio, whose life is connected with Santander. Meanwhile, Santander perfectly translates from the Basque language as Saint Woman, with the peninsula of La Magdalena, one of the saintest women in history, being the most central part of the city.
Cantabria, tierra bendita.
In terms of music, Cantabria doesn't have a genre of its own that would immediately be associated with this land in the world. The province happened to be located between 2 musical monsters, the Basques on the east and the Asturian and Galician gaiteros on the west. But there are good musicians here too. The name of one of the brightest popularizers of the Cantabrian music is Marcos Bárcena. He is a polyinstrumentalist and singer who pays a lot of attention to folklore. Let Cantabrian music be associated in your minds with him.
Inmenso, pronto yo he de regresar. Tan grande es tu hermosura, jardín de verde alegría, a veces melancolía, efímeras la amargura, manto de nubes del cielo, escondes el sol a lo lejos, místicos bosques de tejos, bajo la lluvia en un velo.
The capital of the highly historical Cantabrian land is the right place to pay tribute to the most belligerent nation of Cantabrians who fought against Romans in the Cantabrian Wars and never surrendered under any circumstances. The Cantabrians added their glorious page to the history of war tactics, having invented so-called Cantabrian circle, which is a circle attack of the archers on horses. Romans didn't know what to do with it. You never know where exactly you are gonna have the strongest emotions from your trip. In our case, it happened on the Cantabrian coast next to Santander. The place is called Liencres and is famous for its Playa del Porquio, with a stunning view on a bay with a complex configuration. The waves here in storm weather will leave you breathless. finds its end in an impressive town of Swanses, where under the supervision of the Iron Man, the local surfers practice their skills. One of the most popular tourist attractions of Cantabria traditionally is considered to be Santillana del Mar. As the local people joke, the city's name contains three mistakes. There is no Santa here, no Llana, which is plain, no Mar, which is sea. The sea is in several kilometers from the town. Thanks to the big amount of the architectural monuments, Santillana del Mar obtained from UNESCO the status of Humanities Cultural Heritage.
Cantabria is not only Santander. It's ocean, it's mountains, it's a great deal of small wonderful towns like Santillana del Mar, full of highly interesting things, geographically, gastronomically. But our project between Two Iberias, first of all, is interested in the Georgian origin of the very word Cantabria.
Cantabria derives from the Georgian Cantebri, similar to Canti, while Canti is the root of the adjective cantieli, meaning reckless. But even the gorgeous Santillana del Mar is not the biggest impression from the continental Cantabria. 50 kilometers away from the seashore, in the valley of the Argosa River, which flows through the Saja-Besaya National Park, there hides the most precious Cantabria's jewel, Bárcena Mayor, a small mountainous settlement where the life has been preserved for at least 300 years. In any case, it's the most ancient town of Cantabria. In the local restaurant, you will be offered a sausage made of the game, as well as unbelievable goat cheese. A true museum under the sky, still inhabited by people. Sure, Bárcena Mayor almost always makes part of lists of the most beautiful small towns of Spain, which our program Between Two Iberias pays special attention to. By the way, those who got hooked on the continental Cantabria should not miss the still fresh film of Joaquín Gutiérrez Acha, Cantábrico. Because someone forgot his tripod in Santillana del Mar, we get back on the coast. And that's for good, because the next stop is the magnificent Cantabrian sea town of Comillas. Despite its small size, Comillas is famous for its university, which once gained so much popularity that was moved to Madrid. Also, Comillas is a place where Antonio Gaudí worked. But our main interest in Comillas is gastronomy, because El Cantábrico, the restaurant, is an ideal place to test the taste of the typical Cantabrian dish called rabas. For the rest of Spain, it's the traditional calamares a la romana, or squid fried in oil. But in Cantabria, the dish has a name of its own. Since Cantabria lacks great wine, we wash this crazy finger-licking food down with albariño from the neighboring Galician appellations named Rías Baixas. Alexander couldn't refrain from ordering some Samburiñas mussels too. They are not that typical for Cantabria solely, rather for the Atlantic coast overall, but without them the dinner would not feel complete. We thank the chef who treated us with his exclusive milk orujo and resume our trip. The penultimate stop on the Cantabrian coast is the picturesque San Vicente de la Barquera in the delta of the Escudo River, which represents a whole national park named Oyambre. That's where we plan to take a drive to an interesting Cantabrian town of Carmona to see the typical Cantabrian casonas montañesas houses, but somehow lost our way. And that's good because you'll have something to discover on your own too. In 10 to 12 kilometers away from Oyambre, we stumble upon the border Deva River with the town of Unquera on it. We didn't order any dessert in Comillas intentionally because we knew where the Cantabrian capital of desserts is. That's Unquera, and the legendary dessert is corbatas or neckties. They are made of the flaky paste and almonds and should be tasted not just in Unquera, but right where the emblematic dessert was introduced for the first time, at the Casa Canal Pasteleria, which belongs to the Canal family, in particular to the local poetess Chus Canal. Looks like Cantabria is over, but in fact it only starts. From Unquera, you must take a drive through a narrow ravine to the heart of the Cantabrian land, the valley of Liébana. Here, Cantabria is intertwined with the neighboring Asturias, so you're about to enter and leave both provinces several times on your way. Finally, you are welcomed in Liébana and its capital, the very sympathetic town of Potes. This is the gastronomic center of all the province. First of all, here they make the famous Cantabrian cheeses, among which there are such masterpieces as Nata de Cantabria, Quesucos, or the main diamond, the blue Tresviso Vejez cheese. As it had been said, Cantabria is not famous for its wines, but nevertheless still has an alcoholic pearl of its own. It's the typical North Spanish orujo drink, an equivalent of Italian grappa or Georgian chacha. It's made of what is left after winemaking. In Potes, they invented their local trademark Orujo de Potes, which is a cream liquor based on orujo, which doesn't yield a notch to Baileys. Try to add it to your morning coffee and you'll forget about Baileys. Meanwhile, we take an opportunity to taste another Cantabrian cocido, this time cocido lebaniego, the trademark dish of Cantabria in general and the Liébana Valley in particular. In your plate you'll see the local chickpea garbanzos, the cabbage, although the classical recipe demands collard greens, also potatoes and the same meat compango that we already saw in Bárcena, chorizo, tocino, morcilla and a jamón bone. Also it includes some stuffing made of migas, eggs, more chorizo and parsley. For Cantabria and other mountain regions, cocido is as an essential dish as borscht for Ukrainians or goulash for Hungarians. The culmination of the Liébana Valley is the mountainous village of Mogrovejo. It's another indescribable museum under the sky that fully consists of the ancient casonas montañesas, which we didn't have a chance to see in Carmona. Some of them are dated of the 15th century. The gorgeous cheeses are Liebanaveli's visit card. One of the most valuable is the smoked Oliva cheese. You can buy it and observe the process of cheese making at Queseria Rio Deva at the village of Camaleño, where, by the way, there is a decent family hotel. Which cheese are you making? Fresh cheese. Lactic ferment cheese. Do you know what cuajada lactica is? It's kind of a spread with dill and other stuff. What renan is this? Animal of lamb. The king of Cantabrian food is cheese picon, alternatively known as Tresviso Vejez, named so after the region it's produced in. It has the third name too, queso tres leches, since it's made of 3 types of milk. It stinks very nice, as any blue cheese should, and is a true brilliant of the Cantabrian cuisine. Besides the picon, in the Liébana Valley there are more very interesting cheeses with the appellations of their own. In Spanish it's called Denominación de Origen. It means that the product follows ancient traditions, is of high quality, keeps the very strict production standards, and is protected by the state from faking. For example, the firm goat cheese TOSCO'S de Liébana, with its own appellation, or the soft cheese Nata de Cantabria. But the most precious is Ahumada de Oliva. It's a smoked cheese. Cantabria is not rich in wines. Orujo is more popular here. It's a strong spirit which is a product of grapes must distillation. Who wants something less strong can enjoy crema de orujo, a cream liquor from Liébana, or more exactly from Potes, Liébana's unofficial capital. This orujo is a wonderful digestive. The best anchovies I ever tasted in my life come from the Cantabrian town of Santonia. And not only anchovies, but also bonito, a tuna-like fish, very popular all over Cantabria. Certainly we cannot do without honey. Again, it's Liébana Valley, where we are now. This honey has a trademark of Miel de Liébana and is protected by an appellation and made of heather. A wonder of Cantabrian cuisine, quesada, which is widespread all over Spain. In fact, it's kind of a baked pudding, but it's made of so high-quality local cheeses that it's not good to compare it with ordinary puddings. Finally, an interesting story about the local pastry called sobaos pasiegos, which are produced in Valle Pasiegos comarca. They are known all over the country, but originate from Cantabria. At the beginning, they were made of simple stuff like just flour and butter. Today, they add there, for example, rum. This is a very popular Spanish product, protected by an appellation. So we say goodbye to the ancient Cantabria and turn another page. That would be Asturias now, the land of gaiteros, the best blue cheese and cider. Sacred land for every Spaniard and for every Georgian too.